Whitfield, contender for Tom Cotton's Senate position. Welcome back to Progressive Insider. I'm Brandon Johnson, your correspondent du jour. But before we start off, I know you can't say it, so I'm going to say it. Fuck Tom Cotton. Fuck Tom Cotton. Fuck Tom Cotton. I want you to fill us in a bit on what's going on with the ballot. One good thing about the Republican Party and what they've done in your state that was an unintended benefit is the fact that they've eliminated the Democratic contender off the table. So the two-party system, rodeo circus thing, is done for the most part. So it feels like you're pretty much a shoo-in.
Yeah, we're in a really unique situation right now where we actually don't have a Democrat in a federal United States Senate race. Normally, as like a third party, everyone would be like, well, you're just going to split votes. You have no chance. Just what's the point? Well, now we're in a unique position or situation where as an independent, I can actually win this thing. I can unseat and replace Tom Cotton because I don't have to worry about splitting votes. I have the Democratic vote. I have the progressive vote. I have a lot of the independent vote, the green votes, a lot of libertarians, and even Republicans who want to vote for someone other than Tom Cotton, but would never vote for a Democrat. So it's a very unique situation we're in.
So what are the obstacles, that you're up against now? I know you were having some issues in regard to ballot access. I know they're trying to place, similar games that they were doing with the Democrats with you, but it doesn't work because they were so busy focusing on eliminating the Democrat opponent that, you kind of slipped under the radar. But what are you up against now?
So corruption, a lot of corruption, unfortunately. Tom Cotton has given money to our governor. He's given money to our Secretary of State, our Attorney General. And after these three people took money from him, they've been helping him run unopposed this election cycle. They helped him get the Democrat out. And now they're trying to they helped to fight the libertarians from getting ballot access. And now they're trying to prevent us from getting ballot access as well. It's a lot of corruption. And I don't know if you've seen, it's probably more local news, but our Attorney General actually just announced she's running for governor in 2022. So she's taken money from Tom Cotton and is now trying to help him prevent a legitimate candidate from obtaining ballot access and beating him. And now she's like, well, and after we do this, I'm going to run for governor. So yeah, it's all just a lot of corruption. And where we're at right now is, as an independent, my primary is a little bit different. If you're a Republican for your primary, you pay the state $20,000, boom, you're on the ballot. If you're a Democrat, you pay the state $12,000, you're on the ballot. And as an independent, I need 10,000 signatures between February 1st and May 1st, the 90-day window, and that is my primary. Unfortunately, it was unforeseeable that COVID-19 was going to happen, and on March 13th, our governor issued orders of the state implementing a state of emergency and banning large gatherings and implementing social distancing. So that really affected our signature collection process. We first pleaded to the governor asking for reduction in the signature requirement due to COVID-19, and he took money from Tom Cotton. He was unwilling to listen. He actually took our letter and said in an interview that he just handed off to his legal team, left it at that. So then we reached out to the Secretary of State, John Thurston. Unfortunately, he's taking money from Tom Cotton. So he said he did not have any authority to help us in any way. The head of elections for our state said he had no authority to help reduce the amount of signatures required to gain ballot access. So we decided, it's insane. And we decided we needed to force his hand. So we sued for ballot access, for relief due to COVID-19. And the Attorney General, Leslie Rutledge, after taking money from Tom Cotton, is his defense counsel and is representing him. So that's the kind of what we've been going up against. We had our hearing in our day of court on May 27th. The Honorable Judge Baker listened to a 9-hour hearing for us, and it took her 4 weeks to give us a 61-page judgment. And in her ruling, she states some very important stuff. So on the surface, it seems like she ruled against us, but in reality, she was actually kind of doing us a favor. So she ruled against us, saying that we do not qualify for preliminary injunctive relief, but she did state we have standing for declaratory injunctive relief. So what that means is she ruled against us. She ruled in favor of John Thurston. So now we can appeal to the Eighth Circuit courts. If she would have ruled in our favor, then the attorney general, who, as soon as we got the hearing, they would have been able to appeal, and they would have just locked us up in court until after the election, which the judge, stated many times in her ruling, many different cases where John Thurston has done things like that, where candidates have tried to get ballot access, and he has held it up in court until after the election. So she did us a favor. It seems like it was a loss, but really it was a win, because now we can appeal. We are expediting our appeal, and before the ballots get printed, we will have ballot access, and they won't be able to do anything about it.
And one thing I found out in my research of your state in regard to what's going on with your elections is your governor recently, because of COVID, is in favor of absentee ballots now.
Well, that was a whole different issue on its own. So originally, he was in favor of absentee mail-in ballots. He had done videos on social media. He's like, I support this, I support this, I support this, the health of Arkansans first. And then he went to Washington, D.C. and had a meeting with Donald Trump. That night, he came out and he said, oh, yeah, I never meant I was in favor of absentee mail-in ballots. I was in favor of early voting. That's what I support, early voting. So he got a ton of grief for that. He literally put party politics over the health and safety of Arkansans. And it does seem like they have finally agreed, working with the parties here in Arkansas, to state that COVID-19 is a reason to qualify for absentee ballots, which is great. It should be that way. But it brings up another issue where now they're requiring 3 first-class stamps for your ballot. I mean, it's not that much money, but the point of it is now they're adding a poll tax, which is unconstitutional.
True. What, I guess, speaking of, poll tax being this one thing, but then, gerrymandering, North Carolina, gerrymandering capital of the world. What,
is that the one with the dragon district?
Yeah, we got a little dragon thing going on. We do all sorts of creative, balloon animals with our voting district. So what are you anticipating, are some of the other obstacles that you are up against? I thought, mail-in ballots were, advantageous to the cause. Do you think that's going to be an issue, and what else are you up against?
Well, I think the biggest issue that we're going to be facing is we have an appeal in the 8th Circuit Court, and we are expediting it, but we don't know how long it's going to take. So if they try to get a majority of people seeking mail-in ballots, and then they wait until after the ballots are already printed to decide we do have ballot access, then we're going to have an issue. I'm hoping that we can get all this resolved before, the middle of August, because they say they're going to start printing at the end of August or early September, whatever that means. That's the verbiage they use. And as long as we can get it done before then, we should be okay. But it's more important that we practice safety and have a safe election rather than getting my name on the ballot, honestly. We have to put the safety of the people first as much as we do need fair elections. And when it comes down to gerrymandering, it's been happening here for a long time as well. But the Democratic Party has been the party that's been gerrymandering. They've actually had control of our, state Senate up until recently. So every 10 years when we redraw district lines, it's always been the Democrats who've been doing it. And now they're upset because the Republicans finally have control. They're like, oh, we can't have this. We don't want the Republicans changing all of our district lines. So it's not really a Republican Party or a Democratic Party thing. It is it is a party issue on both sides. I was recently doing an interview with The Hill with the Hill of Roses. And one of the things that, we started talking about is how to end gerrymandering, because it's so important. We have to make sure that we do have fair elections. Otherwise, we don't have a fair democracy. And one of the things that we, kind of came up with was when deciding district lines, who is the person who makes that decision? How do you find someone who's truly uninterested in order to do this? Do you have an independent source do it? Are they truly an independent source? One of the witnesses who testified against me says, oh, well, I'm a registered independent. I'm an independent source. And I say he could have got those signatures, so he shouldn't get ballot access. In all reality, one of the companies she co-founded only donates to Republicans. She only works for Republicans. But she's a registered independent, so she's nonpartisan, So how do we truly find people that are uninterested? I think one answer could be have could be to have another state create your district lines. That way they're a little bit less interested. Or I think the most efficient way to do this with the kind of technology we have now, write an algorithm to do it. Only take two things into account: population and age. That's it. Just make sure they're a legal voter and they, determine it by population size. Don't look at party affiliation. Don't look at race, ethnicity, income, none of those things. And then we can have a truly nonpartisan system. That's my idea, what I think it would be the most effective way to do it.
I'm totally on board with you. And that needs to be in order to make our, system more democratic and open up access and make sure people, every vote is counted. That combined with ranked choice voting is, a favorite of mine. What are your thoughts on ranked choice?
Absolutely. I mean, we have to have ranked choice voting. When we have such a polarized two-party system where Republicans hate Democrats and Democrats hate Republicans. They argue upon deaf ears, and I feel like nothing is getting accomplished in our two-party system. So a lot of people aren't going to vote for Joe Biden because they like Joe Biden. People are going to vote for Joe Biden because they don't like Donald Trump. People aren't going to vote for Donald Trump. Well, yeah, people will vote for Donald Trump because they like Donald Trump. That's the kind of base he has. But I saw a recent poll which was very important to me. And it stated a couple questions. Question number one, are you voting for Donald Trump because you like Donald Trump? And like 74% of those people said yes. And then the next question was, are you voting for Joe Biden because you like Joe Biden? And that was all the way down in the 30s. So we really have to make sure that we're not getting stuck between two candidates and choosing the lesser of two evils, because the lesser of two evils is still evil. I have, of course, I'm trying to look at things from the bigger picture. In 2016, I voted for Jill Stein. I supported Bernie Sanders, and then I saw what happened, and I decided to vote for Jill Stein. And I think one of the biggest...
Me too.
Yeah.
I did too.
She's a good woman, honestly. I love her. I think she's great. She's the reason that I do my weekly live stream every single Saturday night to talk to people and answer questions, because that's what she, brought to my attention. That's how she was listening to people, a weekly fireside chat. I think that that's wonderful, and we should have every single representative doing that. That should just be part of our duties. Every Saturday night, if you go to my Facebook page, I do a live stream Q&A. I do an update, kind of what happened last week, what happens next week, and I answer people's questions. And once I get elected in November and I replace Tom Cotton, I'm going to continue doing that. I'm not going to stop. If every single weekend I'll do a live stream, and if someone has a question about policy, a suggestion about how I should vote or why I should vote this way or why I should not vote this way, I'll be there to listen and answer those questions. And I think that should just be a normal thing.
Like you said and like you said in regard to technology, it should be a normal thing because it's possible now. And on top of that, it feeds into something I really like about your platform is the constituent-driven legislation. Basically, just explain it, to the people.
For sure. So direct democracy is really important. We are a representative republic. I understand that. But our representative republic was formed like 250 years ago, and times were a lot different back then. If something happened in New York and you were in Florida, it could be a month before you found out what happened. If a majority of the American population was uneducated or had education up until like the 4th or 5th grade level. So how could you expect someone to know what's best for them and their family? Times are a lot different now. A majority of us have high school diplomas. A lot of us have a college degree. And if something happens, we know instantly with the freedom of information that these powerful tools that we keep in our pockets give us. I think that I have the ability to determine what is best for myself and my family, and I think you do too. And I think it's really important that we start to look at that. I know the Senate is supposed to be more of a trusty, representative, someone who knows what's best for you and will do what's best when you don't know it is. I just don't think we're there anymore. I think that enough people are awake and that they're smart enough to know what's best. One of the things that I do plan to do is I will submit bills created by my constituents. So you can go on my website and you can submit an idea for a bill, and then you can vote on different ideas. Is this a good idea, bad idea, good idea, bad idea, or so on? It'll be like ranked choice voting. And whichever idea has the most good votes, then I will create a bill with that idea and submit it in my constituent's name, giving Arkansans an actual direct, route to create legislation. Right now, all of our bills are written by billion-dollar think tanks owned by special interest donors that give money to our candidates in order for them to promote that to market those bills. I just think that that's not what our democracy should be. If we are going to be a by the people for the people, then we have to give the people the voice and opportunity to legislate their own bills. We can't just be by special interest donors for their big think tanks.
Gotcha. I mean, I'm with all of that. Some of the holes, how would you address, for instance, the disparity in regard to technology access? Because Arkansas has an issue in regard to poverty. It's a lot of people, who don't have access to high speed, internet or computers and whatnot, or even cell phones that can do what you're trying to do. So
like as far as different ways to vote and making sure that nobody is having a voice silenced.
Exactly.
And that's very, very important. And that starts with the fact that every single American should have high-speed internet, period. There's no reason for an American household not to have high-speed internet today. We have the technology to do it. It won't cost nearly that much money. And if we were to just start rebuilding our infrastructure, which is extremely important, it's crumbling all around us, we can add that into that project. We can add a federal jobs guarantee where we can put people to work who want to work but can't find a job, especially with our unemployment the way it is right now, building telephone poles to people's houses. I mean, how hard is it to put a telephone pole in the ground? We can train people to do that. It's not rocket science. I was a cable guy for 5 years. I mean, I've been in thousands of people's homes, hooked up their internet, their TV, their phone. It's not rocket science. We can do it, and we can train people to do it. We just have to have the want. Once we start there and we make sure that every American has access to high-speed internet, that no longer becomes an issue. But until then, of course, we have mail-in. You can always mail in kind of like a ballot. I'll work on seeing how we can do something like that with like monthly ballots where you can see legislation that's upcoming and you can vote on it, mail it in. You can call in, leave a voicemail. You can send a text message. That would probably be the easiest way. Most people can send a text message now, even if their phone doesn't have, a screen. and we can find different ways for people to participate in a direct democracy platform. And I think the biggest issue we're going to face is security. And it's not like we're starting from scratch. We actually have different models we can go by. The country of Estonia, they do all of their voting online. They don't even go to the polls anymore. It's all done online and it's safe and secure. And they get a voter's card and they get a little keypad and they hook it up to their computer and insert their voter card. And then it makes sure that they are who they say they are when they vote. One of the other things about it is, and so that someone doesn't, come into your house and hold a gun to your head and tell you who to vote for, you can actually change your vote as many times as you want up until the election day, which is really cool. So if you can even change your mind up until election day on who you want to vote for, depending on what's going on, because, things happen every day. Look at Tom Cotton. One day he's talking about using an overwhelming show of military force against American citizens. It's not a very popular idea to use no quarter. He said we should issue no quarter orders against American citizens expressing their First Amendment constitutional rights. That's a war crime. It's crazy. Personally, I think with our voting, we should even have an option of making our vote public. How many people really care about a private vote? I don't even get that luxury. People always ask me who I'm voting for, and if I don't say who they want me to say, then they aren't going to vote for me. It's just I've lost my personal vote, which is okay, I guess. Never mind, it's not really okay. But anyways, that's the reality of it. And you should have that option of making your vote public. That way, when you go and you look at how your vote was cast after the election, you can make sure there was no kind of like election fraud, because you can see your vote was the way you wanted it. And if it doesn't say the way you voted, there's a problem. So, and that should be optional. Some people do want their stuff private, but I would be willing to give up that privacy so that I know that my vote was cast the way I wanted it to be cast. And then I can go on and on about, direct democracy. I put a lot of thought into it and talked to a lot of different people.
I'm here for it. I am here for it all the way. I guess the flip side of that, and that's a great segue, into education, because we talked about election security. You talked about election security, and how we would keep the vote secure, at the point where the rubber hits the road, where the person, plugs in their actual vote. But what we saw in 2016 and what we're seeing right now is a lot of, front end manipulation of individuals due to them not being informed about current events, current issues. You have disinformation, you have, real fake news generated, by, Russia and Saudi Arabia and whatnot, infiltrating our election system, our election process, and affecting, the voters. What would you do about education and addressing education?
So, I mean, we see that very specifically with our campaign. How many articles have you seen that say Tom Cotton is running unopposed? A lot, but it's not the truth. I mean, even besides myself, who I am still in legal battle, which we're very confident about, we will have ballot access, but there is still one other person on the ballot. So he is not running unopposed. There's just no Democrat in the race. So we do deal with that every single day. As far as education goes, we have a really unique situation here in Arkansas, where we actually have some of the best schools in the country, and we have some of the worst schools in the country. We have some of the highest paid teaching salaries, and we have some of the lowest paid teaching salaries. And we're such a diverse state, from, say, Northwest Arkansas to, even Northeast Arkansas to Central Arkansas to South Central Arkansas, and all these different areas where, our average income up here in Northwest Arkansas is like $55,000 per house. And there's some counties still over by the Delta where their average income is like $25,000 per house. We have to figure out how to get our children an equal opportunity in education. And I think the best way to do that, after speaking with the head of the Rural Teachers Association, is instead of using property taxes and community taxes to go towards their schools and their communities, we need to pool all of that money together throughout the state. And then we need to disperse it evenly per child. That way we can make sure every child is having that opportunity to succeed and to move forward throughout, their educational career to become better contributing members of society. We have to figure out how to weed out some of the systematic racism that's been sown into our society. And, that's one of the big things, a lack of funding to education. And it's there on purpose. They do it for a reason. It's not an accident. And we have to start solving problems with that. We could even look towards federally funding schools in that way, using our states to pool these taxes and then distribute them evenly, maybe even say $10,000 per student per year, or however much it costs. But we have to start distributing money evenly. There's no reason that one student in one area should be receiving a $20,000 education per year, and another student in another area is getting like $1,500 to $2,000 for their year's education. And once we start building the, education from that foundational level, then we can look at college education. I do support the free college tuition for 2-year degrees and trade schools. And then if you maintain a 3.5 GPA, you should be able to continue to your bachelor's at no cost to the student. The biggest resistance I get to that right there is people like, well, I paid for my education and they should have to pay for theirs, or I don't want to pay more taxes to pay for their education, and things like that. But the truth of the matter is, we know how we're going to pay for it. It's going to be a 1% speculation tax on Wall Street, a currently untaxed investment opportunity that people make trillions of dollars from. So we won't pay for it. The most elite, wealthy people in America who are benefiting from everything we put into our society will pay it back to us. They'll pay it forward. And we have to make sure. I work in automation. I see the dangers coming from automation. I automate jobs. I've automated my own job. My work doesn't even really need me anymore. I'm just glad they keep us around. I guess they just like us. But we're getting to the point where by 2035, we are going to see a 40% unemployment rate. 40%. A lot of people don't understand what that means. Just think of it this way and respect it. During the Great Depression, we were at 25%. During COVID, we were at like 30%.
Yep.
And it's going to be worse than the unemployment we experienced just these last few months from COVID, except we're not going to have a CARES Act. We're not going to have anything like that. People are just going to be having to figure out how to pay their bills, how to feed their family, pay for gas to go back and forth to work, to look for jobs and things like that. So we really have to focus on education, because once this happens, those jobs, you're going to have a degree. I mean, it's probably going to be like a computer science degree,
Exactly.
Psychology degree, and different things like that, because corporations are starting to bring into more sociologists and psychologists into our work environments to help keep morale up, because it kind of sucks going into your office and working in front of a computer every day for 8 hours a day for the rest of your life. But anyways.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know with 25%, I think I read a statistic, I think with the Annie Casey Foundation said 25% of children in Arkansas are living in a state of, poverty. So like with what you're talking about in regard to automation being on the forefront and, having, a lackluster education environment, I don't see a lot of those children having a path towards some of those, jobs that you're talking about that are more secure.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is we're not going to be able to get people to take advantage of this free college tuition if they're not even getting the opportunity to make it up to college with a good, education, a good educational foundation. So we do have to start from the bottom up and work our way all the way through college to the point where we're going to be needing these people to contribute to our society. And, education is super important. And as we do things like this, we can work it on raising teacher salaries. We were trying to figure out, the head of the World Teacher Association and myself, how do you raise teacher salaries in low income areas? Because, their salaries directly reflected upon their taxes coming into their communities. We have to make sure we're bringing in better jobs to these places. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what our income is here in Arkansas. With an average income of $40,000 per year, we are the 49th richest state. We can thank Mississippi for being the poorest state. That way we're not. That's about it. And we need to figure out how to make our economy better here in the state. I know a lot of people be like, well, you're running for a federal position. Why are you worried about state matters, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's a problem, and we need to talk about it. Whether or not I'll be able to do a lot about it, I can still bring these big issues to, public spotlight. I think personally, Arkansas, we used to be the #1 producer of hemp in America. We used to be number one.
I was just about to go there. Now,
yeah. I'm not talking weed. I'm not talking marijuana, cannabis. I'm talking about hemp, industrial hemp. It can be used to make. Yeah, it can be used to make paper, clothing, building materials, biodiesel fuel, and CBD oil. I'm sure everybody has seen how many CBD stores are popping up everywhere. We can return to being the #1 producer of hemp, the #1 exporter of hemp, because in 2017, when they passed the Ag Bill, it federally legalized it so we can export it again. And then we can build these processing facilities to process it into these different items. And if we were to require a county to make, say, less than $30,000 average income to build one of these processing plants in, then we can bring the jobs where we really need them. We can raise these, rural cities up that just have no way to make a good income. We have some of the most fertile lands in America on the Mississippi, and these lands are just sitting there. Last October, I went to the Farmers Appreciation Fish Fry, and I talked to hundreds of rural farmers in Arkansas, and they want to get in this. This is the green rush. They want to make all this money. They want to make their businesses better and have better lives for their families, but it's expensive. It costs money to get the machinery, it costs labor, and it costs all these different things, and they can't afford to do it. So what we have to do to make this possible is we need to reallocate our subsidies that are going towards corporations that are making billions of dollars. If a corporation is making billions of dollars, it should not be getting billions of dollars in subsidies, because large corporations suck up 70% of the agricultural subsidies. 70% of subsidies go to corporations that don't need it. It's just extra income. It's just free money for them. So we need to make sure that we are reallocating that money to go to small farmers, especially ones that have to, file Chapter 12 bankruptcy in the last year or two because of this trade war. And we need to start taking care of these small farmers and allow them to build our communities up for us.
Legalize it, subsidize it. I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that.